Hey Flosstube, this is Kim, aka Spartan Stitcher on Instagram, and I am back again with another weekly cross-stitching update. And as you can see, I have a guest star today. I know it's been a while since you first saw him, and we are trying something out to see if I can get him used to being in this room. This is Hopper. You've heard me talk about him. He is a blue-fronted, that's the blue on his forehead, blue-fronted Amazon. He is 2001, so he's like 19 and a half right now. And they can live in captivity 50 to 80 years. So he's still going to be with us a while. And I have some Cheerios with me and some toys. We'll see if he will play a little bit. And right now, I'll move it down a little bit so you can see he's actually on his scale. I weigh him daily, so this is he steps on it usually all the time. I don't usually have the newspaper underneath it because he's not there long enough to poop. So the newspaper and being in a room that he's not in a lot of times has him a little uneasy, but we'll see how he does throughout the video. So today is December 7th, 2020. Pearl Harbor Day. This is video number 98. I have 3 pieces to show you, one of which is a finish, and we'll talk about plans and Air Force story. So let's get to it. I'm going to give him, this is like, okay, this is funny, right? Because it's the spool, and this is a cross-stitching video. One of his favorite things. I usually take a piece of leather thong, and I tie a knot on either end. I tie a knot, I put one of these on here, I tie another knot, put a second one on, and tie a third knot. And then I cut it so there's not long pieces at the end. And he can untie those knots within a few seconds. And he likes to chew on these, but he may not do it right now just because he's uneasy. But he'll hold it in his foot and itch his head. So you have something to watch besides my stitch pieces. So, the first piece I worked on this week was also my finish. This is the Ingleside Imaginarium Witches, Catalog of Witches Familiar Sal. I gotta hold this up so he doesn't get scared because he doesn't like towels. So, there you go. The last familiar is an owl, aka Stringiforms, or something like that. Again, this is on 32 count Lugana in Murky by Picture This Plus, and this is the entire thing. I'm extremely happy with how the whole thing went. I've loved stitching on it every single month, and my favorite finishes this year are this piece and Macintosh Mill. This one was more fun to work on just because it's simpler, it was easier to do. So, thank you, Brittany, for a wonderful mystery stitch along. Hopefully in a week or so, she will be able to announce her 2021 stitch along. Are you just going to hold it there? Yeah? Yeah? Pretty bird. Oh, we're going to poop. Second thing I worked on is you dropped it, Santa Sampler. This is by Cooler Design Studios. You can get it as a PDF on their website, but I have it in the Down a Cooler 555 Christmas Designs book. And my goal for the year was to get 4 Santas done. And I have 4 Santas done. So this week I put in 1,300 more stitches. So first I think I backstitched it last time you saw it. Yeah. So there you go. There's all 4 Santas. A little bit closer up so you can see it. There's a lot of backstitching and like 4 colors of backstitching on each Santa. So it's definitely one that you want to backstitch as you go and not stitch the entire piece. And then do the back stitching for last. You're going to hear a click. He's not very happy. We'll see if he'll eat his Cheerios. This is just a skewer stick to make like kebabs to go on the grill. He's scared of a chopstick, which most bird owners use for target training. And of course the clicker that I used. That is step one to doing all different kinds of other training, is to understand you touch the stick without biting it. Just touching the stick, you get a treat. And if the perch was longer, I could, let's see if I can get him to turn around. No. Turn around. No. That's okay. You have to allow them to fail too. So next time he might try harder. And a little popsicle stick. I'll see if he'll play on that. Third thing I worked on this week was the Modern Folk Embroidery 4 Seasons Stitch Along from 2018. And I'm trying to get this winter section done. I put in 1,500 stitches. And I got quite a ways done. So I finished, I did this whole flowery motif, some border work here, brought these snowflakes down, the trees, and I did this corner and this corner. This is on 28 count Monaco that I dyed using Rit Royal Blue. And I'm stitching it with DMC Ecru floss. So now all I have left is the word winter and then the lower Quaker little motif to put in there. And then that will be done for the year. So it's, all I have left is winter and this little section right there. So that's what I worked on this week. I told you that I was going to work on Odin, but my real life update / Air Force story for the week changed the plans on that one, so I did not work on Odin. Let's see. Plans for this upcoming week. I still have to get a whole page done on Kindred Spirits by Jody Bergsma. I have my monthly rotation and page to try to finish on Templar Prophecy, Long Dog Samplers, and monthly rotation to do on Big Red Ship of Life by Ink Circles. Now, stitching content that's not actual whips. You know, I showed you last week my FFO on Christmas Rules by Lizzie Kate. On my personal Facebook page, I also post my my FFOs, sometimes even just my FOs. And so all my non-stitching friends can see them. Well, one horse friend that has, you know, complimented my finishes and shown interest in other finishes before, she's like, man, I wish we lived closer so that you could teach me how to stitch. Because we live close to each other in Louisiana, but that's been, you know, that was 2015 when I left there, and she's also military. Her husband is now retired, but she's in Virginia now. So how do you teach someone to stitch? Well, I talked with her over Messenger and found out what kind of themes she wanted to stitch, and she picked something springy to keep her, you know, feeling the springtime all throughout the winter while she lives in Virginia. So I found a couple different patterns that she liked. One of them was free, is the 12 Months of Flowers by Ellen Morris Stroh. And then another one was a berry sampler and a leaflet that I had for my mom. So what I did is I looked in my stash and I went to Hobby Lobby and I essentially kitted her up for those two pieces. I sent her some Ada of different counts. I sent her all the floss for the berry sampler because for the flowers, she may just pick one or two to stitch. So I didn't kit those up because I didn't know which one she was going to pick. So, and I sent her a Q-snap and scissors and needles. And I found out a beginner playlist of videos that someone posted, and I sent that to her and said, this is a really good start to get you, you know, some tips and tricks on how to start. And then she can always ask me if she has any questions. So another friend trying to get them into the stitching habit. I have not asked recently how my neighbors here at this base have been doing recently with their stitching, but I definitely need to do that, because one of them had a stocking they've been trying to work on for 6 years for their daughter. So I need to see how that's going. Now, can I have it? You just gonna drop it? You hear him growling at me? Normally he'd be playing with this, but again, it's because he's uneasy in this room. He can split it apart pretty easy with his beak. There he goes. Scratching his head a little bit. That's how he reaches all the new feathers coming out, huh? Yeah? Are you a pretty bird? Can you do pretty bird? There you go. There's his little wolf whistle. I can't whistle, so it's pretty cool that he knows what I want him to do. Okay, back to stitching. I'm distracted with this one over here. Earlier today, Anne posted the bingo board for January bingo in Full Coverage Fanatics, and I updated the event description. So, but it's, if you played bingo with us in July, it's exactly the same. It's just a new board. And of course, Anne and I have been working on this board and throwing around ideas for a few weeks, so we've had a chance to kind of look at it and consider what whips we're going to use and what lines we're going to go for. It's harder doing it in January than in July, because in July you're halfway through the year and you already have some goals accomplished and others that you're working on, so you know which whips to work on. Well, now here in January, everything has a fresh goal, or you're just starting the year fresh. You don't know which one to work on. So I went through it. I made a list of each block, which whips of mine fit each block. And it's like, okay, now how do I pick what to work on? So it's a little tricky that way. But for bingo, I printed a black and white copy. But you can get this in the files of Full Coverage Fanatics. Just to go over the rules again, if you're doing counting option, it's 1,000 full crosses or 2,010 stitches per square. If your whip does not fit the theme of the block, you can do 2,000 penalty stitches, so just double the amount. If you're doing the non-counting option, then all you have to do is fit the theme of the block, but there is no penalty option for the non-counting. So you can try for a line across, a line down, a line diagonal, 4 corners, or you can try for blackout. If you already accomplished, let's say, this square to do this line, and now you want to try for this line, you do not have to re-accomplish the square. Okay, you've already done those stitches. It's good to go. And you can use, let's say, because we always like to make our challenges fit every full coverage stitcher, whether you only have one whip or you have 20 full coverage whips. So yes, you can use one whip for multiple blocks. It's just a different batch of stitches. You still have to do the 1,000 stitches. You can't count the same 1,000 stitches for multiple blocks. Or for the non-counting, you can't count the same indeterminate number of stitches for multiple blocks. You have to show in your pictures that you're doing new stitches for that block. And of course, Stitcher's Choice, that's your free space. So, just a fun game in January, the entire 31 days, to get you motivated to work on those full coverage whips to start off 2021. If you have any questions about bingo, you can ask me below in the comments. Or if you're in Full Coverage Fanatics, I put a post up. Really, Hopper? This is... Okay, this part of the scale is not actually attached. So when he does get spooked... Where are you going? Let me go get him. Hi. Yes. This is what happens when you have a bird that is not used to the room. Yes. Yes. I'm left-handed. My husband's left-handed. He prefers stepping up onto our left forearm. And we trained him before he was not quite so tame to never go up on our shoulder. So take a Cheerio, chill out, we're almost done. And you can see he doesn't have much flying ability because he just went straight and then kind of crashed on the other side of the bed. So, as I was saying, if you have any questions about Bingo, you can ask them down below, or I have a post to try to direct all the questions to Bingo in one spot in Full Coverage Fanatics. And that is it for my stitching content. The only thing I have left is Air Force story / what happened here last week. So if that's all you're interested in, is the stitching, we'll see you next week. Good bird. I gotta show you how. You see? I'm his favorite person, and he still growls at me because he's uncomfortable right now. Can you do foot? 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 No, he just wants to leave. Normally he'll play footsie with me. Okay. Air Force story. I told you last week that I was going to work on Odin because of what my husband's schedule was going to be. He was potentially going to fly another long sortie of over 30 hours last week. It did not happen for a couple of reasons. And of course, everything I'm going to tell you has been published. So I'm not telling you anything you shouldn't know. Or that isn't public somewhere on the internet. The base here had 2 missions to different parts of Europe. So that meant they were going to fly from here to Europe and back, all in one sortie without landing anywhere. Multiple aerial refuelings from tankers, like the KC-135 I talked about last week that's being converted to a nuke sniffer. So, but this time, unlike the last time, remember my husband's last long flight was the beginning of October. So 2 months ago. Where are you going? This time they had air spares. You don't want it? No, he doesn't want it. Let me pause and go put him away, and then I'll continue the story. Okay. No more distractions. So this time, when they had long sorties to 2 different parts of Europe, they had what we call air spares. I have touched on the subject of air spares in previous stories months ago when I talked about the presidential funeral flyovers that we did out of Seymour for President Ford and President Reagan when they passed away. So the concept of air spares is that you launch more airplanes than you need, and at a certain point, you make the decision which airplanes are going to continue on with the mission, and then the other ones can come back. Now, for the presidential funeral flyovers, I don't believe they actually turned back. I believe they flew all the way to Washington, D.C. and to Michigan because you don't want to have a shortage of airplanes when you're tasked with a 21-ship flyover. So these are different missions. We're flying to Europe. It costs a lot of money to fly those airplanes across the pond, and the idea was they're sending 4 airplanes up, so we're launching 4 airplanes to have 2 cross the ocean to complete the mission. So they made that call before they crossed the ocean, after their first aerial refueling. And my husband and other people on his crew were in the last one 2 months ago and had already done a 30-plus hour sortie. It didn't really feel like they wanted to do another one. So the other crew for his mission was all young guys, like captains, that had never done a 30-plus hour sortie. They were not eager to do one, but you know what? You need to learn these skills. And so my husband came back. So he landed at 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. while and then so the other mission also had an air spare that came back. That was my neighbor. So they both came back, and then the other two airplanes continued on with each of their missions. When of course, he slept in because he got to bed at 2:30 in the morning, and he slept in. And after the girls were off to school, woke up and come to find out that the airplane that continued on with his mission had a small problem, not serious, a small problem while they were crossing the ocean that meant they had to shut down an engine. Now, these B-52s have 8 engines. They have more than enough power to continue flying. The problem is that these engines don't just, pushing the airplane forward is not the only thing that these engines do. Depending on the engine, it runs other systems, provides power, and runs other systems on the aircraft. So it depends on what engine on the plane has an issue as to what the effects are if you need to shut down that engine. So the engine itself was fine. How it interfaced with the system it was running, and I'm not going to get into details, is why they had to shut down that engine. So they were still fine to continue crossing the Atlantic Ocean, but they were not fine to continue with the mission. So they diverted, and every time you have a long mission like this, you have a couple different divert bases already picked out. So I knew where the divert bases were before he even took off. And they diverted. They landed in the UK. And so we learned about this Thursday morning about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And so we are, he goes to work. We're trying to find the number for the spouses so that we can contact the spouses to know that their husbands will not be back Friday morning as planned. And then it becomes, okay, what's the game plan? Of course, not mine, but this is what I think of because I was a maintenance officer. What's the game plan to fix the airplane? You got to send maintainers from here. You got to try to figure out what parts you need and send those over as well. And then there's the disappointment that the mission was not going to be completed because they had to land before they accomplished the mission. The other plane that went over did accomplish their mission and met up with Norway fighters and did some other things, and then they returned as normal. So now you have more than a handful of guys stuck over in Europe with a plane. These are young guys, like I said. They have never done a long sortie. Young guys did not plan accordingly. You would think, my common sense, if you're going to cross an ocean twice in one sortie, you should prepare for the possibility that something happens. And you have to divert and land somewhere that is not back here at home station. One guy left his phone. He never takes his phone with him when he flies. He always leaves his phone in the squadron building. And he's like, it's either here or here. And my husband looked around looking for that type of phone that he knew this person had. It wasn't in either one of those places. Okay, we'll check here or here. It's not in either one of those places either. And we're talking the very next day after he left. And this is a building that you can't, not just any person, like I just can't walk in there. I have to be let into the building. Another guy took absolutely zero extra clothes with him. So when my husband flies on these long sorties, he has a full backpack and a cooler with the food because each person makes one meal for the entire crew. So instead of having each person bring 5 different meals worth for themselves alone, you have enough food to make a meal for everyone, and everyone makes a meal in that little oven that I talked to you about 2 months ago when I was telling you stories. So in my husband's backpack, he carries, change of clothes, some toiletries, some, if he has any extra prescription medicine. And this guy did not take any clothes, none whatsoever. So they flew over there being cocky, thinking they were coming back, or thinking that they were going to be the ones to turn around because they weren't the primaries on the schedule. Even though the other crew had told them, we've already done this. You're going to, if both planes are equal, you're going to be going. Because the concept of an air spare is if one of the planes has an issue before you make that decision, the other plane can go forward. So my husband took his credit card to the BX, and because here's the thing is they're there stuck at a base in the UK. The BX there on base is only open 2 days a week, and because our aircrew is unclean or from a foreign area because of COVID, they're not allowed to even go to the BX, even if it was one of those days that it was open. So they can't just go to the store and buy their toiletries, buy, underwear, socks, t-shirts, whatever. They can't buy anything. So when the maintainer team left on Friday, my husband had gone to the BX here. He bought underwear, he bought socks, he bought t-shirts, and bought some shorts. Put them all in a, military deployment bag, duffel bag type. Gave it to the maintainers and said, "Here, take this with you," so that they can take the clothes to the ignorant aircrew members. These are captains. They've been in the Air Force at least 4 years. To me, I would expect this out of airmen, but to take them clothes because they weren't prepared for the possibility of diverting and being stuck somewhere. Meanwhile, the parts were supposed to leave the base here on Friday, be driven to the East Coast of the United States, 4 days, and then get on a cargo ship, a cargo airplane, to be flown over there so the maintainers can troubleshoot and fix the airplane. It's going to be a while before they get back. And in the meantime, this week, I talked about the flying schedule and how each month, approximately what you're going to fly. And this week is the surge week. Now, I'm not going to talk specifics about what that means here, but at Seymour Johnson, when we flew a surge week with F-15Es, on a non-surge week for the combat squadrons that have more airplanes than the training squadrons. So you have about 27 F-15Es. And of course, some of those are broke, some of those are in phase, some of those are at depot. On a regular day, we would fly 12 turn 10. Now, what that means is 12 frontline sorties. Turning the aircraft means a basic post-flight inspection, refueling the aircraft, re-uploading munitions if you're flying munitions. So we're talking about 3.5 hours in between land and the next crew show time. So 12 frontline sorties. They fly for about an hour and a half. They come back. You have 3.5 hours to turn them. If they are broken, that's what time you have to fix them, or you sub in your spares, and then you fly another 10. So there's already an attrition of 2. You don't have to provide all 12 airplanes. On a surge week at Seymour, that 12 turn 10 turns into a 12, this is approximate as far as I can remember, 12 pit 10 turn 8 pit 6. Now what that means is, when I say pit, that means engines keep going, refueling on the ground. So they don't come all the way back to their normal parking spot. They come to a spot on the ramp where there is fuel tanks under the ground, so like a gas station, fuel tanks under the ground, and they hook up hoses to little receptacles, just like you see at a gas station, and they pump it into the airplane. The aircrew is still on board. The engines are still running. They might shut down one of the 2 engines. So we're talking less than half an hour they're on the ground and they're back up flying. There's no inspection going on. They're just coming down to get gas on the ground. So 12 pit 10, or was it sometimes 12 pit 12? And then turn, so you have the 3.5 hours in between to do inspections. So the first 2 goes, you have 1 aircrew, so the aircrew is flying twice because they're not getting out of the airplane. So 12 pit 12 or 12 pit 10 turn, so change the air crew, inspect the airplane, refuel the airplane, 8, pit 6. So again, a second set of air crew flies twice. So you're flying the jets a lot more. And one reason we do that, like here in December, Christmas break. Just like the schools have Christmas break, where there's no school schedule for 2 weeks, there's no flying scheduled for 2 weeks. That doesn't mean we can't fly. That means that unless some world events spring out of nowhere, we have no flights scheduled for those 2 weeks to allow more people to go on leave or spend time with their family. So, but we still need to get the month's worth of sorties flown. So that's why this week we're flying Surge. But now we have one jet stuck in the UK and all the air crew that's on it stuck in the UK. And those air crew, I guarantee you, were on the flying schedule to fly this week. So my husband is flying twice this week as of right now. We'll see how that goes. So let me look at my notes. Yeah. So there's your Air Force story and how craziness can happen. And even sometimes officers don't use their heads. But that's why if you're on the maintainer side, the air crew are the dark side. We make fun of them all the time. Sometimes they write up problems with the airplane, and air crew had this system in OFF mode. It wasn't turned on. Or air crew can cause impound on aircraft if they accidentally drop a pen. Well, now you can't fly that airplane until you find the pen, or do a very thorough inspection to find a pen, or whatever they may drop. So there's constantly a friendly rivalry between aircrew and maintainers. So that's your Air Force story for the week. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of seeing Hopper. I'll bring him in a little bit more, and we'll see how it goes in future weeks. Bye, guys.